This is Motorola's new Edge 40 Pro, a premium phone that brings some pretty neat features. Could this high-end smartphone be the next big thing for Moto? I'm Will for GSM Arena, and let's find out in our Edge 40 Pro review. The Moto Edge 40 Pro is a different beast from last year's Edge 30 Pro. It brings some revamped features which bring it more along the lines of an Ultra model. You get a 165Hz OLED display, IP68 waterproofing, a telephoto zoom, and 125-watt fast charging, and of course the latest flagship chipset. The design of the Edge 40 Pro is sleeker than ever, thanks to curved glass both on the back and the front of the phone. You can even see the front glass curving into the top and bottom bezels as well. Both the front and the back panels are protected by Gorilla Glass Victus. On the back you get a frosted finish which sparkles in the light and doesn't pick up fingerprints. It's all held together by the thin aluminum frame. Moto phones are well known for their splash proofing, but the Edge 40 Pro goes a step further, with proper IP68 rated ingress protection. The display of the phone is a curved 6.67-inch OLED with a 1080p resolution and a whopping 165Hz refresh rate. 165Hz is even higher than the 144 we've seen on previous Moto phones and makes your swiping and scrolling that much smoother. The extra high refresh rate is fixed though. If you like it to dial down to save energy in auto mode, it won't go above 120. As you'd expect, this display looks great. It's sharp and contrasty. There's support for both HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision, and the colors can be very accurate depending on your color settings. The max brightness here is great too. We achieved about 520 nits with the manual slider, and this can boost to 1050 nits in auto mode if you need it in the sun. You can wake up and unlock the Edge 40 Pro with an under-display fingerprint reader. It's responsive, but we wish the placement was a bit higher up. For audio, you get a pair of stereo speakers. Their loudness is excellent, but the sound quality is so-so, with a heavy emphasis on vocals and mids. You can get the Edge 40 Pro with 256 or 512 gigs of storage, but that's not expandable through microSD. And the interface of the phone is a near-stock Android 13 with some Moto customizations on top. These custom Moto features can be found organized within the Moto app. They include things like customization options, gestures, the peak display, and the game time utility. There's also support for Moto's Ready 4, which connects the phone to a TV or monitor to use a bigger screen, or even get a desktop-like experience. And on top of that, there's plenty of software support here, 3 years of OS upgrades, and 4 years of security patches. The chipset of the Moto Edge 40 Pro is Qualcomm's new flagship headliner, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. It provides both better performance and efficiency than the previous generation, as well as support for advanced memory tech like LPDDR5X RAM and UFS 4.0. In benchmarks, the Edge 40 Pro is right up there with the best, both when it comes to the CPU and graphics performance. There's plenty of power here, and heavy gaming and multitasking are a breeze. Plus, the thermal management here is very good, with the Edge 40 Pro's performance remaining quite stable during our prolonged stress tests. The battery capacity of the Edge 40 Pro is 4600 mAh. That's less than last year's Edge 30 Pro. No worries though, the new model was able to earn a great endurance rating of 117 hours, which blows the previous one out of the water. Plus, the Edge 40 Pro is rated for 125-watt charging, and the charger comes in the box. As you'd expect, it's super speedy, able to charge the phone from 0 to full in just 23 minutes. The Edge 40 Pro can also be charged wirelessly, and there's support for reverse wireless charging too. Now onto the cameras. The 50-megapixel main cam and 50-megapixel ultra-wide are back from the Edge 30 Pro, and they're joined by a 12-megapixel 2x telephoto borrowed from the Edge 30 Ultra. The main cam bins pixels to output 12.5-megapixel photos, and these are pretty good overall. There's plenty of detail, high contrast, and saturated colors. However, there are a few issues. The white balance often produces a greenish tint. Shadows can sometimes end up too dark, and the rendition of fine details like foliage is a bit artificial looking up close. Portraits can be taken either with the main camera or the zoom camera. The subject separation is decent, but the subject's detail is sketchy, no matter the zoom level. Regular 2x zoomed photos from the telephoto cam are just okay. They're not the sharpest around and also look heavily processed. The contrast is again a bit much here. The ultra-wide's photos aren't great either, just alright. Again, the contrast is dialed pretty high. The detail level is okay, but there's plenty of sharpening applied. There's also noise visible in areas like the skies. The ultra-wide cam does have autofocus, and that means you can take macro close-ups with it. These involve a crop and upscale from the normal field of view, and they're decent, but the colors can be off sometimes. In low light conditions, the Edge 40 Pro will automatically apply night mode processing to its photos. Those from the main cam have good color saturation, plenty of detail, and the sharpening isn't excessive. The dynamic range is wide too, with well-developed shadows and contained highlights. You can also toggle a dedicated night mode, and you might see some marginal differences in some highlights or shadows, but it's basically the same result. And that's true across all of the cameras. Disabling night mode entirely results in darker shadows and heavy noise reduction, which means you lose a lot of detail. The zoom camera does a good job with the night mode processing kicking in. There's a high level of detail and good colors and dynamic range. And the ultra-wide's photos are solid if night mode is on. The detail level is decent, and you get wide dynamic range with well-developed tonal extremes. Selfies are taken with a 60 megapixel front-facing cam, but come out at 15 megapixels thanks to pixel binning. These selfies have excellent detail, pleasant colors, and wide dynamic range. The white balance is off in some scenes though. On to video recording. The main cam can record in up to 8K resolution at 30 FPS. There is plenty of detail here, nice colors, and good dynamic range. The main cam's 4K clips are good as well. There's not quite as much detail as 8K, but still plenty, and highlights are handled a little better. The zoom camera's 4K footage is a bit muddy in the way it renders detail. Colors and dynamic range are on point though. 4K clips at 30 FPS from the ultra-wide cam are good with enough detail and sharpness, nice colors, and wide dynamic range. Notably, the ultra-wide's 60 FPS footage is even sharper and more detailed. In low light, the main camera's videos are usable, but not too great. The exposure and shadow development are good, and so is the color saturation, but there's plenty of noise. The telephoto's results are in the same vein. The ultra-wide's nighttime footage is the least likable of the three, softer, noisier, and with more muted colors. So that's the Moto Edge 40 Pro. It brings some standout features like the 165Hz display, great battery life, and fast charging. A Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 and long-term software support are nice to have too. The biggest downside here is that some aspects of the camera quality don't live up to the flagship price tag. But if cameras aren't your priority, the Edge 40 Pro could be worth checking out. Thanks for watching guys. If you're after alternatives to the Moto Edge 40 Pro, one option could be the Google Pixel 7 Pro. Or you could have a look at the OnePlus 11. Let us know what you guys think, and I'll see you on the next one.